technical analysis with the head and shoulders chart pattern, which in this case provides a wide yet well-defined range of resistance to reference from the neckline to shoulder level, where in fact a spread out double top forms to produce a further drop that's also quite significant. Next is a flatter formation, mostly just a horizontal range. The distinction is with a higher peak in the center, along with a defined downward slope developing to finish off the overall symmetrical features of a head and shoulders pattern, which in this case fails to break under the neckline area and instead breaks over the well-defined downtrend line forming the right shoulder area, which leads to attention being focused around the resistance level stemming from the downswing point that forms the head. Soon this 159 level is quickly surpassed, reversing roles to become key short-term support, and finishing off a case where there's a failed head and shoulders pattern leading to a well-defined bullish continuation. During the next major bearish move, which is incidentally from a head and shoulders pattern, the clear levels from the failed head and shoulders pattern can still be referenced for identifying a support range. Here's a variation of the head and shoulders pattern with an inclined neckline, which is followed by a strong drop, characterized by the 3 methods falling and 3 black crows candlestick patterns. The 116.55 level defines the lower portion of the neckline being from the lowest swing point that formed the inclined neckline. This is forming a clear resistance range with the 115 level, which is just from an ordinary but well-defined swing point as well. Naturally, another strong drop takes place with those 3 methods falling and 3 black crows characteristics from the candles that follow the break of this more compact head and shoulders pattern, which also has a slight inclined neckline. And perhaps not too surprising, these levels become influential when recontacted. This even extends into the intraday time frame well into the future. Coincidentally, here's another compact head and shoulders pattern, this time in the intraday time frame. Especially in a shorter time frame, focus on the closing prices to form the main outline of the pattern, since there can be more volatility producing longer wicks in the short term. Now here's a head and shoulders with fairly standard characteristics other than the slightly flatter shoulders. What's more unusual is where it forms. It takes place when the chart is neutral to bearish, instead of marking the end of a defined uptrend. But in this unusual case, it represents bearish sentiment quite well to continue the downtrend, with useful downtrend lines from the right shoulder lasting for quite a while after the neckline is breached. Horizontal levels from the pattern also retain influence for quite some time even after the pattern has completed. Over here, there's the general shape of a head and shoulders pattern with a larger right shoulder portion that ends in a failure to drop below the neckline area, leading to a bullish continuation. Here's a common situation where there's already a defined resistance range that has at least some of its levels run through some of the key parts of a head and shoulders pattern. And actually this is quite precise, especially at the downswing point that forms the head, seeing as how the 1045 level almost runs exactly at the top of the real bodies of those two candles. In contrast, downtrend lines from the pattern have some influence but aren't that useful overall. This would have been a head and shoulders pattern if it wasn't missing the right shoulder portion, whereas this is a head and shoulders pattern, but one that is comprised of smaller candles for the shoulders and large candles for the head instead of full swing points. Incidentally, this pattern is the peak and center of this head and shoulders pattern with uneven shoulders, but a fairly level neckline area. Like in some previous examples, the following downtrend doesn't follow the downtrend lines from the head and shoulders pattern. However, even before direct recontact with the neckline area, there's already some noticeable resistance. When the 153 to 154 range is finally surpassed, It reverses roles to offer support for several failed double and triple top ranges that end up forming ranges which combine to form the general shape of a head and shoulders pattern where the right shoulder is significantly sharper and smaller compared to the flatter and wider left shoulder and head portions that are all fairly well aligned on the still highly relevant 153 to 154 area that will be reused as the general neckline area.